Wonderful. Well, I'm delighted to welcome you all back to the second session today of the AfroSwissters Talks Business in collaboration with Zaria Mobility and as part of the Legacy Roundtable. It's really great to see participants returning to this session. I just want to emphasize that this session is recorded and thank you for introducing where you're from and telling us who you are, what space you work in, and also for joining us since the remittance to investment session that we had 2 weeks ago. In this session today, we want to talk about women investing in Africa, talk about Africa opportunities in the investment space. And Collins Kotia, welcome back. Thank you so much for inviting two of your associates. We have with us, we're honored to have with us today, Danielle Ciribassi Seck, who is joining this session, telling us about her journey. Danielle's story is one of profound connection. She has lived and worked across more than 14 countries in Africa and is fluent in English, French, and Wolof, building real bridges across linguistic, cultural, and economic divides. And she has more than 18 years of experience and has advised international companies and governments on market entry strategy, business intelligence, financing, and cross-cultural collaboration, something dear and near to the work we do with AfroSwissters as well. And through her company, Niofar, I hope I pronounced that correctly, she supports small, medium enterprises and international companies in navigating the complexities of investment, relocation, and expansion across the continent. Danielle's work is grounded in deep listening, systems thinking, and practical partnerships building, which we will dive in more into. And from Senegal to Washington, D.C., from Mauritania to Paris, she has convened forums, advised governments, trained cross-cultural teams, and has led business delegations. Her purpose is clear: to create opportunities, to reduce the so-called friction, and to help businesses, local and global, to thrive across African markets. And Danielle, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight and for sharing part of your journey with us later on.
A real pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. And of course, we have Collins Kotia back with us. Collins, thank you so much for joining us again, for being a partner in this series, and for just being a sparing partner in this, collaborative project. Collins is the founder and CEO of Zaria Mobility, which is a Nairobi-based firm that began with relocation services and evolved into a comprehensive market advisory company, supporting companies and families that want to enter African markets, specifically in East Africa. And Zaria Mobility focuses on ethical relocation, offers strategic services, and strategic market entry. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you back. You introduced me, and you are introducing us to Danielle and Jane. And welcome to you, Jane Theodore. We're pleased to welcome you. You're the co-founder and CEO of RIMS Software Developers. And thank you for being part of this session. You bring a decade of experience at the intersection of telecommunications, software development, and institutional innovation, where technology meets real-world transformation. Jane's journey is rooted in also both technical expertise and strategic communication. She has studied public relations at the University of Nairobi, and you've earned a bachelor's degree in business information technology from KCA University. And you bring this rare blend of human-centric communication and deep technical knowledge. And we look forward to hearing more about the opportunities that you see in the tech space. Under your leadership, RIMS Software Developers has grown into a respected provider of secure, scalable software systems, which are tailored to the needs of institutions across Africa. Jane leads a team that designs and deploys IT solutions for everything from school management to payroll and GIS integrated services. And, without diving too much into the nitty-gritty, because I know you will introduce yourselves even in more depth and with more richness, I just want to say that Jane's work is a case study in how African-born solutions can scale with integrity, automating processes and strengthening service delivery and enabling data-driven decision making. So, under your leadership, Jane, we would just say we welcome your company and we look forward to hearing more about how you started. So, in this first segment, we will dive into the past, founding stories, and why you have all started. So, the floor is yours. Please, Danielle, let's start with you. What has inspired you to start your business and advisory work?
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Hello, everyone who's listening. So what inspired me to do advisory work? I would say my own personal experience, having to do it myself without an advisor, without help, without guidance. Um, I moved back to Senegal, to Africa, after having been here in 2009 when I was a student in microfinance. I was doing international economic development and I did an internship here 16 years ago as a student. And back then, the program was, I was part of a program. It was very well organized. Housing was taken care of, by the program leaders, and everything was set up for us. So it was a very, I think I had rose-colored glasses. I was a bit jaded. So when I moved back here many years later, 8 years later, full time, I had traveled back and forth for a week or two at a time, 3 weeks at a time, but relocating back here as an entrepreneur was a totally different experience. So there wasn't, as far as I knew when I got here, there was no visible, strategic business guidance. And even to this day, at least in Senegal, there isn't a lot of, I would say fully comprehensive and transparent consulting. It's coming more and more from what I see across the continent. And I think that's what people really need. But at the time, it was sort of piecemeal. You had to go see, you had to go seek out an accountant, for example, and you had to see multiple accountants in order to in order to get the full picture of what was required and what the obligations were. Find a lawyer, ask around. The internet was often very outdated. The information you find on the internet, and when you do go in person, it's usually, at least here in Senegal, there's a lot that's on printed paper, or somebody has jotted down by hand what the required documents are. So you're not quite sure if it's the full official list or what's going on. Sometimes it has to be certified, sometimes not. So it was quite a challenge for me, on all sides, finding my own housing, getting my own immigration set up, finding a car, navigating all the different industries. When I was trying to I first came here to get a job, I wasn't necessarily looking to start my own business, but I was really looking to to do consulting work. And for various reasons, I decided to just go ahead and start my own consulting firm. And for the reason is because I wanted to provide the service that I had needed myself to others. So I see myself as sort of I kind of paved the way. I guess I was a pioneer in some sense, but just making it a little bit more accessible, a little bit more transparent, a little easier. And so it started out in Senegal, but then as the years went on, I got more and more requests to offer a similar service elsewhere. So in other countries in the sub-region and across the continent. So it required me to reach out and, leverage my network and find some, quality partners to work with so that we can make things a little bit easier for those who come after us.
Amazing. Thank you for this introduction. And you already did talk a bit about, the ecosystem that enabled or that prompted you to get into this business. But when you look back, what do you think was the biggest misconception when you decided you want to invest and start shop on the African continent?
I think it's not necessarily a misconception, but I think there's a gap in expectations which is really important, especially when you don't have access to things right off the bat. It's very hard to get, business loans, for example, or financing. So people who come to Africa, you're coming on your own dime. You're coming with your own money that you've saved up, your hard-earned money that you're coming to Africa. It's a big risk. And so the more information that you can have off the bat in order to make wise decisions is critical. But what I found is that there's the gap between the opportunity, which is often what is touted in international conferences and abroad when we talk about Africa, and there's just like the opportunities that are here. We want to, I think there's an impetus to put the best face forward. We want Africa to have, we're so motivated that the Africans leave behind these negative stereotypes and this bad narrative. We want it to be taken seriously. We want it to be a trade partner. We want it to be seen as a land of opportunity, which it very much is. But a lot of people are very wary, very hesitant to talk about I would say the negative or the challenges, because while you never want to talk about the challenges on their own, because I do think that's negative and I think that's pessimistic, and you never want to. We're not doing that to discourage people. But my approach is always you're upfront about the obstacles and the challenges, and then you offer solutions. So it should always go with what can be done to bridge those gaps. We're not saying it so that they're roadblocks, but we're saying the reality. We're sharing the reality because that's what you have to deal with as a business owner, and that's what makes this business environment unique and different than other countries. And the more information you know up front, the more successful you're going to be, and the more you can manage risk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, managing risk. We'll definitely get into this later on. But to you, Jane, what has inspired you to start your business? And I just must say, I love that we have a diasporan view, someone who was not raised or who didn't, grow up on the continent versus you, Jane, your introduction and how you started your business.
Well, thank you, Tallulah and team, for having me here. So I would say I'd borrow a bit from what Danielle has said. Okay, my inspiration to start the software programming business came from a deep desire to solve real-world problems through technology. So, and early on in my career, I realized that many organizations, especially in sectors like finance, education, and government, are really struggling with inefficiencies due to outdated data and manual processes. I look at it like when I'm trying to use my courier services back home, transporting goods from one place to another, they often get lost on the way, they get misrouted. You get what I'm saying? So we needed a clear path, offer a solution where the process is seamless. When I'm looking at education system or education sector, over the years from year to date, how I'm able to track finances as an institution from year to date, how are we able to track the child's transportation system. I look back and I see I have 3 daughters, and more often than not, they use the school transportation systems, especially when they're going for these short trips or just as a trip from here to school. How am I able to track my child's location through the GIS integration? So I'd say it's more of creating solutions based on need. So I saw an opportunity to create reliable, secure, and user-friendly software that could streamline operations, but also empower decision makers through real-time data and intelligent automation. We're right now moving into AI, automation, machine learning. So how do you incorporate that in the current technology? So combining my passion for building scalable solutions within the digital transformation, I founded my business to bridge that gap. Okay. And every project I take is driven by a goal of desirable impact based on what is your need? What do you need? Is it a payroll system? Is it a GIS integration? Is it an e-learning platform for businesses? Like, for example, if I look at one of the leading telco companies, which I'm privileged to work with, this is Safaricom Kenya or Safaricom PLC. We often have forums where we do learn periodically. You need to, technology is quite growing and it's growing adversely. So how do you equip yourself? Do you have platforms for your employees to keep learning, keep upskilling, keep growing their careers? So this is what I'm looking for in a more intuitive institutional platform. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you for this rich introduction, Jane. And similar question, were there any misconceptions that you did have before you started your venture?
Oh, wow, there's quite a few. And I laugh about it because it's quite interesting. They often say, there's a quote that says, a good code sells itself. Well, technically, yes, but a good code, I really underestimated the importance of marketing, relationship building, and understanding the client pain points. Because as a programmer, you just focus on the code, but do you focus on how do you market? How do you build relationships? How do you bridge the gap to understand your customers' pain points? Okay, so that I've gotten to really learn that, and it has brought me closer to my clients, and that is where now my PR skill also comes in. So also another misconception was that our clients always know what they want, but do they really know what they want? They do not know. So part of my job became guiding them, refining their vision, and also helping them discover what truly works for your need. And I thought also a very other interesting misconception I had is I could do everything by myself. I could be a developer, a marketer, an accountant, a support agent. I had cases where I was the one picking calls directly to support clients myself. But I soon learned that growth comes faster when you delegate, when you collaborate, and when you trust others within their own strength. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about there. Also, all clients will respect the value of customer software. I believe every client would appreciate the time, the thought, the expertise behind custom development compared to custom solutions off that shelf without understanding the long-term ROI on the business. So yeah. And then maybe lastly, I assumed that a great product means instant success. You know, when you know you have your vision is quite clear, and you expect your customers to rapidly adopt to your ideas, but it requires a lot of patience, a lot of persistence, ongoing improvement, building trust, acquiring new clients, delivering real value, and eventually it will pay off. Yeah.
And at this point, Collins, I would like to bring you in because in the last session, we did speak about Zaria Mobility and how you got started. But just at this point, I would love to bring in your perspective of, when you started, are there any of the early challenges that you've experienced that we just heard about? And, looking back at when you started all those years ago, who were the people or systems that supported you at the start? And when did the three of you meet and connect?
So thank you first for the session, and it's great to hear from both Jane and Danielle experiences in the market, guided by the experience on how they started. I think my first misconception was this is going to be easy. Things are going to move fast. This is Kenya. Things are going to be dynamic. They're going to move fast. So I'm going to build very fast and enter the market space with a unique idea and grow. But then I discovered even just to set up their own concept took almost 6 months for registration. And the loopholes in the system, like I mentioned in the last session, delayed the registration process because back then, 2009, most of the work was manual. Government institutions was manual, so you had to run back office just to get documents signed, paperwork done. So my assumption that the business will grow very fast because it's going to be easy in the market. I think that was a wrong assumption at that particular point. And so I got to learn very early that it takes time to build because many people even didn't understand the business. So of course, I also had to just focus on educating my suppliers who I'm going to deal with, my clients to the client market was there because I was dealing with multinationals. But then there was a loophole to understand what is mobility, what is relocation exactly. Because when you talk about the term mobility in Africa, it basically means e-mobility, so the e-bikes and everything else. But making the market understand what it means, and of course there's a market niche for it, I think it enabled me also to just get clients coming on board. But then I had to form trust with my vendors on the ground because it was a big issue finding the right people to work with, be it in the real estate sector. There's a lot of conmanship in that particular sector because you don't trust easy. Even landlords themselves, they were ripping off clients and companies with their returns of rental, the deposit itself. So I think coming in and bringing integrity and setting up trust with a team, because that time I started with 2 people and we grew now to about 10. But trust was a bigger issue. Trust was earned because over time, then now trust is earned. And we started growing. It took time. I think our breakthrough came after about almost 3 years in business, is when at least we started getting breakthrough in the market. So the perception of, I think Africa is you come in and things are going to move fast. You're going to get your way easy. You're going to move fast. You're going to grow. But unless you understand the dynamics from the beginning, unless you make those collaborations with trusted partners from the beginning, then the journey is going to be very hard. But then when you get it right from the onset and from the incept of your product to the market and form the right relationships, form the right collaborations, the right partnerships on the ground, and understand that it takes time to grow. But once you form that base and that foundation, I think it is now easy to basically grow in the market with trusted partners. And just to top up to what you asked about how I met Danielle and Jane. For Danielle, of course, she's focused on West Africa market, and I was looking for a trusted partner in the West Africa market because we were getting a lot of clients who wanted to move to the West Africa side of Africa and set up shop as well. And in Africa, partnerships and collaborations is key. And that is how we got to interact with Danielle. And over time, we've had discussions of growth and we formed our own unit of trust with each other to refer clients to each other. Not only covering Senegal and Ghana, but also Nigeria, Gabon, the outside Cote d'Ivoire, parts of West Africa. And through that collaboration and through that trust, we are growing in the continent. And same to Jane. I mean, when you look at it, one thing that really captured me with what Jane is doing, which is really necessary in the African continent, is coming up with solutions for the education sector. Because as a woman in that space, it's sometimes very difficult in the African space for women entrepreneurs in the tech space to grow. So when you're seeing Jane working with Safaricom PLC, which is the largest telecommunication company in East and Central Africa, I mean, it shows you that there's progress in bringing women together in that space to also educate other women to grow and to learn and enable them also to become techpreneurs as they grow, because education is key and knowledge is key. So that drew me close to what Jane is doing and we're interested to what she's doing as a business, and also how can we collaborate together to basically grow the tech space, especially when you look at it in terms of how can we encourage more girls to enjoy STEM, more girls to enjoy the tech space and understand it and know that they can earn a living being a techpreneur in Africa. So that is what really made me and Jen collaborate and see how we can grow in this field, basically in the region.
Thank you. So interesting. And Jane, it would be lovely to hear your perspective as a woman in tech, if you see those hurdles. But in general, I'm also very interested to share with the audience the experiences you had, Danielle, moving from the US, moving over, and also Jane being based on the continent. who were the people that you could trust initially? Because there's a big there's a big question about trust, right? And I believe hello, welcome Samantha and Angelina. It would be really interesting to get a better understanding of how you find the people or entities that you can trust, and what was your experience when you started or when you moved to a certain sector in space? Perhaps Danielle, we start with you because you moved from another continent, and yeah, what was your experience and how did you find the courage to trust an entity?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find my unmute button. So yeah, trust is critical, and I usually say that trust is one of those fundamental pieces, is really part of I think everyone's culture, how we view trust and how we trust other people. And from my personal culture as an American, I can speak for I think most of us when I say that we have this idea of innocent until proven guilty, give someone the benefit of the doubt. Everyone's a good person deep down, and we're not comfortable like assuming the worst about someone up front. We want to assume everyone is a good person until they prove us, otherwise. That is a very dangerous way of doing business in Africa. If you assume everyone is nice because everyone's acting nice and everyone's smiling, you are going to hit your head against the wall a few times. And that's, I think, how a lot of people lose a lot of money because they're too trusting. They're misreading people's body language. They're misinterpreting contextual clues and maybe missing uh, incentives or disincentives. Whereas if someone's saying, yes, I can, when, you really look into it, are they capable? Or maybe they're saying yes to many, many other things at the same time. And so they've taken on too much, they're stretched too thin. And then when it comes to your project, you're at the last point on the priorities list, and then it doesn't get done well or as quickly as you want. So I think people jump into things because they want to believe everyone has the best intentions and everyone has their best interests. And I would say, as someone who isn't part of the African diaspora, and I'm not a descendant of African, I'm Italian, so it's my grandparents were from Italy, but I'm just saying, I think from my diaspora friends, it can be an emotional thing to do business in Africa back home, and so I think they really, especially, want to believe that everyone's got their back. But unfortunately, that's where people get so disappointed because they're putting their money, they're trying to help, they're trying to invest, and then how can people deceive them to that extent? So I think what I was told, an advice that I got that really helped after a few times I got burned, was people that I've known for many, many years here told me, you trust people here. People here trust each other maybe 30% upfront, meaning when you first meet somebody, you don't trust them. You can smile, you can be nice, you can be polite, but you don't trust them. You let the person build up trust with you over time, and by giving them, milestones or tasks or tests. You have to test people, and you have to test them with things that are not critical to your deliverables or your business model, that are make or break right up front. You give them small tasks or you give them small things, and you see how they can handle it. Do they come back on time? Are they motivated? Are they transparent? And then you test a few people. So I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket and have one partner for one thing. I'll have 2 or 3, and I'll give them each the same task, or I'll give each of them a similar task, and I'll see which one of them is the best, because sometimes it's a matter of personality as well. Who do you work best with? And you have the culture, you have the society, but you also have personality. And so sometimes you mesh better with certain people rather than others. And so once you're testing people, and over time you can kind of see who's a better fit and who you can rely on. And so trust, I think that was something I had to learn from doing business here, is that it is something you learn over time. And I'm talking lots of time. Like, it can take years, and sometimes people have been known to turn on you after years of working with them. So it's sad. It's a sad reality. And I wouldn't say it's unique to Africa. I think that's like doing business in the Middle East is similar, South Asia. I mean, most of the world, unfortunately, is that way. There's a lot of unregulation. There's lack of protection, and less than we would like. And the result of that is that there's not a lot of accountability in business in Africa. And so I think that's where the danger comes from. And that's why a lot of people are mistrusting. And that's why you get a lot of bad behavior. So I think, yeah, not investing everything up front, taking it step by step, testing people, and not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, having multiple people to try it and have in your back pocket in case one falls through.
Thank you for this insightful answer, and I can't wait when we pivot into, the present and your future aspirations. It will be very interesting to further understand what has kept you on the continent until today and all the positive experiences that you've had. But perhaps, Jane, we would love to hear from you, and then I would also love to hear from the audience if they have any experience that they would like to talk about, and experience to share of having invested or trusted in regions where they're either have lived or have dived into as investors.
Well, thank you, Tallulah. So for me, it's a bit emotional when we speak of trust, because having to start from grace to grace and having to just have a chance of even family and close friends believe in you, offering that emotional support, that encouragement in cases where even like a startup capital, when you need a startup capital, those are the people who come through for you, the people who see your vision, they keep you grounded, they keep you motivated. And it's so funny because earlier on when I needed clients, just one client to take that one chance on me, it was very crucial. You understand? And that is also a biggest part of my trust journey. Those clients who took a chance on me, they had those big companies that were more established in names, but they gave me an opportunity to deliver projects to them. They saw value in me even before I delivered the work for them. They trusted me and laid the foundation for long-term opportunities, partnerships, and referrals. So my clients who took a chance on me, I speak highly of them. I speak big on them because they give me the referrals to date. And also my first team members, as I told you earlier, I started thinking I would do it all. I would be a dev, I would be in operations, I would be support. But as the company grew, I so need to diversify, get more people on board because I cannot be a one-man show. So the people who joined early, despite the risks that the business brought into it, the passion they had, the loyalty, creativity that shaped the company's culture, they were not just employees to me, they were co-builders of my dream. So I really appreciate that. And lastly, my family, close friends, a special need of dedication to my dad who offered that emotional support, and also just the startup capital. So, and just as currently the local networks and tech communities that we join, Women in Tech, that's in Kenya, where we have this forum and a group where we interact to get to network, we get to develop groups, business meetings, also where we collaborate, provide knowledge. These communities have been so impactful for me because they trusted in me. Yeah.
Powerful. Yeah, I think family is one of those resources that if you do have family that you can trust and that trusts in you, it's always yeah, it's a privilege. It's a genuine privilege, and finding the right middle ground of having, investors who you might not know initially, but also extending that trust and receiving that trust in return is a gift. So yeah, thank you for sharing that aspect. I would like to open to the floor. Angelina, perhaps. I see we have Yasmin Kasamba, who I trust is in the tech industry as well. Is there anyone else who would like to share experiences of, having invested in Africa or thinking about investing in Africa, and the question of trust, where to start, or perhaps, having people or systems that you are considering to invest? Okay. Well, with this, I would just like to move to the second segment. We talk about the present and navigating the current state, the now, so to speak, the market realities that you're experiencing in the different regions where you're operating from. So, Danielle, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see when people to try to work across borders? You have had experiences working across borders, and what is your experience in working in Senegal and other places?
Yes, this is such a big question, because I think oftentimes when we think cross borders, it's like, oh, Africa and the rest of the world, or the rest of the world and Africa. There needs to be more, as we talk about often, Collins, and cross-continental collaboration. We have 54 countries. We have lots of opportunities just within ourselves, without looking elsewhere. So that is also a big part of it. So and the thing is that I actually find it sometimes more challenging when working with, say, a Nigerian company that's trying to set up a subsidiary in Senegal, someone in Ghana who's trying to set up in East Africa. There's a lot of overestimating or being overconfident. I would say underestimating the difficulties. I think people tend to say, oh, I'm African, we're from the same continent, it's going to be easy. No, it's often that where you have a blind spot, because you just assume. And so I do a lot of cross-cultural training. And so a lot of people misunderstand, and they think a cultural training is like, what kind of food do we eat and what languages do we speak? It's more about there's actually a whole industry about intercultural communication, and especially with a professional lens. And so you've got a lot of so you've got cultures that are explicit communicators, for example, and implicit communicators. You have societies that are more horizontal, and others that are vertical, meaning they're more hierarchical. And you tend to have those kind of societies in, for example, Francophone Africa, which we've inherited from our friends, the French. But also I think it's part of the tradition as well. And then you've got the Anglophone countries like in Kenya, who it's just night and day in terms of how people communicate and how people live their lives in business and else, outside of business. And so, for example, when you have those two cultures trying to work together, that can bring a lot of frustration. And I've seen it specifically with my Nigerian friends who are used to high speed and lots of competition and don't waste my time. And then they come to Senegal, where we love to waste everyone's time, and we love to go very slow and not give all the information. And we like to be very diplomatic, and Senegalese will never criticize anyone. We never call anyone out. We never, demand anything, even if a service is bad or, someone makes a mistake, we never call them out. Whereas my Nigerian friends won't hesitate to do that. And it can really damage their partnerships and their relationship, because people just don't want to work with them anymore, and they'll just become very passive aggressive. And so culture plays a huge role in business and in life. And so I think that's something that's definitely underestimated. Typically when I do cultural trainings or onboarding, for example, I have a lot of people from the sub-region or from Ghana, because they're English speaking, coming to work on the mines or coming to work offshore for the multinational companies here in Senegal. And that's something, is they're like, oh, my company's making me do this, but I'm from West Africa, so I don't really think I need this. And then we get into the discussion, or we check in a couple months later, and they're like, actually, you were right. It's really frustrating. And so, yeah, I think that's the first thing, is working cross cultures, not to underestimate the role that culture plays. And just quickly, secondly, is that there is a lot. There needs to be more, I would say, understanding between the Francophone countries and the Anglophone countries in terms of how business operates, how society works, administratively, politically, socially. It's very cumbersome to work in Francophone countries. There's a lot of, outdated laws. It's at least in West Africa. Well, I think West and North is primarily Francophone, but we just have a different system. It's less streamlined, it's less efficient, I would say, than the Anglophone side. Anglophone is very much more grassroots, it's bottom up, it's the private sector kind of driving things, driving policy, whereas it's the opposite approach for Francophone. It's more top down. There's a lot of advocacy you have to do, a lot of engagement with governments, a lot of back and forth with ministries, a lot of getting approvals, even for something that in the United States, for example, would be a private sector project. Like you wouldn't have to really engage with the government at all. But here, they like to be involved in everything. So those are the 2 points I would highlight.
Very interesting. And again, I would like to, enable everyone also to just raise their hands or jump in if they have questions or comments or feedback, even if it's something that you might not agree. I think it's always so rich, especially in such a closed circle, to have, to have a debate, and we really welcome it. But thank you for those insights, Danielle. Jane, is that a similar experience that you've had working across borders, and the same for you, Collins? But let's start with you, Jane.
Well, I think for me, it's more of, I feel like we do underestimate cultural differences quite a bit. And this I would relate in my previous or recent trip to Lagos, Nigeria. As Danielle has said, there it's go, go, go. And I'm coming from a culture where it's who do you know to go? That's quite different. So assuming business practices, communication styles, and decision-making processes, they're not the same everywhere. Like in Kenya, who do I know? As Kotia initially said, he took about 6 months to just process his registration. You get what I mean? Someone else who knows someone would take a month or two. So it depends on who do you know, where your negotiation styles and communication preferences. Other thing I think we often ignore is the legal and regulatory compliance. We overlook local laws, licensing requirements, labor regulations, or data protection policies. If you're coming from diaspora, how do you then get to follow the licensing requirements? It's not going to be the same with me who's currently
I don't.
experts. Yeah, or partners who understand the regulatory landscape before launching or signing contracts as a partnership. So another thing I majorly experienced was the poor financial planning. When you fail to factor in foreign exchange risks, double taxation, or international payment barriers, then it becomes a problem. How do you work with cross-border financial advisories to use international friendly banks and consider currency hedging strategies if needed? So those are some of the few things that on my end are quite keen to look at.
Those are great points. The international finance and financial transactions, how to find advisors, and managing currency exchange losses. Those are good ones.
And do you feel it's more the international aspect of it, receiving financing on a global scale or domestically?
Tallulah,
I don't know, Jane, didn't mean to cut into your
no problem, Danielle.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So please take that up again.
Is it more the financing? Do you feel it's challenging getting financing domestically or internationally?
I feel like it's more international for me. Because if you rush into partnerships without due diligence or aligning the values and goals, then it is a potential risk legally, financially, and also ethically. Like when you look at it long term, what is a long-term alignment? So, and it also brings in conflict of interest, loss of brand reputation. So there's quite a lot in that space. Yeah, of the financial bit. Also, the change in currency. How much is much to invest in the the company you want to invest in locally, or yeah. So there's quite a broad scope to look at when we talk of financing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have some more to add to that as well. Which Collins, we talked about that a bit as well, especially when you're doing business across the continent. So just it's both, it's international outside of the continent, and then cross borders within the continent is difficult. For example, when we receive money from it as an international wire, for example, with our economic zone, it goes through the central bank. And sometimes you could get a new director, or you could get a new policy put into place where all of a sudden they're being really strict. And so it's fine. Like, they're trying to cut down on fraud, money going in and out of the country. But the problem is that there's not a lot of communication. It's very, like, the procedures are manual. So you don't get notified that you have an invoice or a payment coming through that they need justification for. It just gets stuck. And so we had at some point like lots of money, and we couldn't figure out why it wasn't appearing in our bank account. The bank was saying they didn't receive it. The client was saying that they paid, and we didn't know where it was. Well, it ended up it was stuck in the central bank. And as soon as we provided our invoicing, they released the payment. And it was something obscene, like it was a lot of money. And they're like, they're government, public officials, they're not business owners. So they're not really, like, they don't understand our pain when it comes to cash flow and not having that money at our disposal when we're trying to do other services. So it was very frustrating. And it can be the same for, let's say, a loan that you need to pay regular interest payments on. That can be very annoying. They can block the payment on a technicality. It can also be very slow. So making payments out of the country, it can just take forever. Like, it just takes forever for them to process. And then all of a sudden you get a new director and it takes, 10 days or less. So it's very inconsistent, not to mention that we did the calculations recently when we wanted to offer services out of Rwanda, and then have it be, invoiced through Senegal, and then pay our subcontractors out in Rwanda. But we did the price comparison, and it was 50% higher because we had to take into account the wire transfer fees, the currency exchange loss. So the client is paying in US dollars or euros, which is the international currency. It goes into SEFA, goes into our local currency, because you have to get special permission to have an FX, an account in USD or euros. And so it has to be converted to SEFA, and then it gets converted again, to Rwandan currency, not to mention taxes and, like I said, the bank fees. So you end up losing a lot, plus your margin. So you have to really, it was like 50% higher. And so it's like, wow, how are we really going to do this? And a lot of people, as an option, they open up their, what do you call that in English? Mother company, your holding company, or your main company. You can open it up offshore. So in Mauritius is still an African country. They're just known for facilitating financial transactions and having companies where it's a more favorable tax environment, and it takes 48 hours to send money anywhere in the world. So basically that's my strategy, is eventually I'm going to set up there, and then I'll have my subsidiaries across where I need them to be in different countries in Africa, and we'll have the operational money wire when we need. So that's what a lot of people do. And I'm just throwing that out there as a consideration, is that if you're planning to do business across multiple countries, it might be worth considering having one entity in Mauritius and then managing things from there.
That is very insightful information. Thank you so much for sharing this, Danielle. And I see Angelina is smiling over there. I wish we would have introduced her at the beginning. And I do this, I put people on the spot, but since the title is also on beauty and tech, Angelina is actually in the beauty space. And, Collins, I wanted to ask about your experience with cross-border misconceptions, but just in the interest of time, I want to rope you in to talk about the sectors of growth, and I know beauty is one of them. So perhaps Angelina and Collins, I don't know, Angelina, if you feel comfortable enough, if you just introduce yourself briefly, and then we move over to Collins, who gives us an intro into what he has observed in the beauty space.
Okay. Thank you, Tallulah. I wasn't prepared at all, but I will try to say something about myself. Well, I am originally from Kenya as well. Now, having moved to Switzerland close to 14 years ago. So I have worked in different sectors before I decided last year to embark in the beauty industry. So I just started a startup last year, and it was more so not a business, but just a hobby, because I was just trying to test the market here and there. And yeah, so I'm still navigating the market in the EU, and particularly in the DACH region, so in Germany, Switzerland, and in Austria, because I figured out there's a void when it comes to inclusive skincare, right? So that was the whole reasons why I decided to start up to begin with the startup. I cannot say much about doing business in Africa, particularly in Kenya. I know it's hard. I have family members who have had challenges here and there. I myself have had that challenge, especially when it comes to money transfer, as Daniela mentioned, because I was trying to support business entity down in Mombasa. So I was not an investor, but more like an angel, a business angel. And it didn't go well with the transfer of the money because it went to the central bank and it got stuck there for almost 2 months. So at some point, I thought that maybe they ran away with my money, but it was, I think, the same reason that maybe Daniela was mentioning, that they needed a proof or invoice or something like that. But we didn't provide this because I did it like a way of, yeah. So that's the only thing I can say about trying to do business in Africa, or more or less helping a business entity in Africa. But so far, with my startup in Switzerland, I would say it's very easy process to begin because everything is really structured here. When I decided to launch officially, because as I said, I started it as a hobby before I decided to get serious last November. So it's pretty easy to open a business. You have agencies that really guide you through that. And it's just more or less, you have to be very, very compliant. You have to respect the regulations. And in the EU, we have, or how can I say, laws when it comes to skincare or cosmetics. So basically, in this industry, one has to be compliant to obey the laws. And of course, as an inclusive skincare brand and as a Black-owned skincare brand in Switzerland, it's not easy. So the same challenges that people have in Africa to navigate the market or to get customers, or yeah. So it's the same challenges that I, as a Black-owned business, is also facing here. But I would say so far, I think I've had only very positive experiences. Partly because I also don't have that problem of having to find investors. I mean, it's a self-funded startup. So that was not my challenge, but my challenge was more or less my positioning, because you have to, it's still a challenge for me up to now to define my position, because I had some business strategist advising me to basically focus on melanin skin rich or something like that, melanin rich skin. But then when I'm living in Switzerland and I am targeting the DACH region, then that's a very minority group here. So that's why it was also a bit of a challenge to try and find my positioning so that I can actually be able to bring my product to a more wider audience. So it's basically in Europe, it has its own challenges. I would say also I've faced other business entrepreneurs who mentioned that their challenge, especially Black-owned business, is finding investments. It's not that easy to find investment for startups, and a lot of business have had to close up in the European space for Black-owned. So basically, those are the main challenges that business people, Black-owned businesses or African-owned businesses are facing within the EU region, I would say. Otherwise, that's all I can say. I'm sorry, I'm not prepared at all.
Thank you so
But
much.
maybe for the next talk, I will be more prepared. I just wanted to join today and to listen to everyone and maybe to take a little bit points from the people who are more experienced than I am, so that I can be able to maybe learn from them or also maybe collaborate, right? So yeah, that's all.
Brilliant, Angelina. Thank you so much. And Collins, Danielle, Jane, I think this is beautiful that Angelina and you are all meeting, because I definitely see cross-continental collaboration that can happen from a Swiss skincare brand all the way to Africa, especially, your home terrain in Kenya. But Collins, over to you, the beauty space, the beauty sector. Is that a sector of growth? If so, why?
So, Angeline, pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much for showing up. So two things. I think when it comes to remittances first, the Central Bank of Kenya is very regulated, yes, but then it depends on the amount of money that one is sending to a company. So what I mean is, if a company has been running for a long time, and maybe 2, 5, 10 years, and their parent bank is seeing large amounts of money coming in to that particular company, either through remittances, wire transfers, or business. If an investor was to, let's say, send 500,000, it wouldn't be quote unquote flagged by the CBK, because they know this company has been running for some time, and there's no reason to flag it because of the amounts of money coming in. I think why most companies are flagged sometimes is the CBK, the bank itself, the parent bank flags CBK saying, hey, this amount of money is unusual coming into this particular account because of the day-to-day activities you're seeing being received of money by this particular company. So at such instances, the CBK, which is the Central Bank of Kenya, will definitely freeze the account until they investigate to understand exactly the nature of business that that particular company is doing before they release the money to that particular company. And that might take time. So that is why we encourage investors, when you're coming to partner with a local company, or you're coming to set up shop, or building that trust to the local supplier, first of all, get to know who they are, do a due diligence of are they capable of handling this particular finance, background checks on their customers, if they can give you referrals. That way, it can be easier when you're investing in the company for remittances purposes, because the company has been running for some time. And so even if you put money into the company, you're guaranteed that it won't get stuck somewhere. And then you start getting worried, oh my God, where's my money? It will start paying off. You'll see the money flowing, basically. Now, having said that, I think when you talk about beauty in East Africa, in Kenya per se, I think Africans, we make business harder for ourselves. We don't trust each other to do business with each other, because we put loopholes. So even when it comes to beauty and cosmetics, I'll give an example. We have a lady called Huda. Huda is a Kenyan in the creative industry, and she's known in terms of being a model in the creative space and doing all these things. So she started her own line of beauty and cosmetics, and no one was purchasing it, right? So she took it to the supermarkets, she took it to the brands and the pharmacies, but then no one was just really buying it. So what did she do? She partnered with a company in South Korea, because in South Korea, there's a region that manufactures both high-end and low-end products. And she discovered for her to break even and to get profits, she went to the lower side of manufacturing products for cosmetics and rebranded that particular product to be like a South Korean product, but in essence, it's a Huda product. And then it came to the Kenya market, and what happened? She's right now a millionaire because of that product. It's on the stores, it's on the supermarkets, it's everywhere. But it's not under her name. It's not branded her name because Kenyans will trust something more international. However, we are now setting up companies in Kenya from international beauty and cosmetics companies that want to partner with local entities who are in the beauty and cosmetic space. For example, Hako Industries. Hako Industries is really promoting beauty and cosmetics products for Kenyans to sell their products in the Kenyan space. And we're seeing that so much of it is selling right now because you really need to understand the market entry when it comes to which beauty products am I dealing with. Because there are two categories. There's pharmaceutical, which takes time to basically be approved by the body because of the substances being used. And there's a cosmetics generic, which doesn't really have substances that can be deemed harmful to basically someone. And that one, you can even be given a 3-month trial, no registration, nothing. You bring your product, find a local distributor, get into a partnership with them, and then they distribute your products to the market for testing. Let the word go around because we're seeing a very big growth when it comes to beauty and cosmetics in the Kenyan space. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. What matters is how do you get the market entry with the right product in the space? Of course, we're seeing skincare products on the rise. Unfortunately, most of it is from the China market, which as well has its own definition of that. But you're also seeing American products. We're also seeing French products, European products being brought into the Kenyan market. But Hako Industries specifically is a big Kenyan brand promoting Black Kenyan cosmetic products. And they're really doing well in the market to the extent that now they're covering 8 countries in Africa. And you can imagine those 8 countries in Africa, they're also channeling the Kenyan beauty products to those particular countries. So how you come into the Kenyan market will determine your success in the beauty and cosmetic space, because I can guarantee you, you will grow, you will get returns, but then you just need to get your market niche, get the right distributor on the ground, and then of course do your due diligence. Where can my product hit market, and where can I get my product to basically sell? Is it on the shelves in the supermarket? Is it from the pharmacies? And then know where the market base is, the clients are, and definitely the product will definitely sell by itself. And partnering with a company like Hako, for instance, we are seeing growth from local suppliers partnering with such companies to build on their brands in the Kenya market. And once it builds in the Kenya market, then definitely we're seeing growth in the East African cluster, whereby we're seeing other products from Kenya in the beauty space being sold in Uganda, being sold in Tanzania, and even in Nigeria and West Africa. So your market entry is what will really matter. And again, like you're saying, I think building trust on the ground and finding the right person to navigate that particular product is what is going to really matter in terms of you having a success in the African market.
Very interesting, because I'm already seeing the Marie Claire Vogue cover with Angelina, who tried to break and position herself in the DACH region when all she had to do was actually go sell the Swiss-made product in Africa. So a lot of food for or makeup to thought there. Danielle, what is your experience? What sectors do you see? You do import, export, you facilitate services, you're a Pan-Africanist. What do you see? Which sectors are either overhyped or really booming right now?
Well, great question. So, the big sectors, I would say, of course, is like as usual, is mining and everything that goes around mining. The problem is that there's a lot more funding opportunity and attention placed on what we call critical minerals, and not so much some of the others. So that's one thing, is when I'm looking for partners abroad, some of them don't work with, they only work with critical minerals. So mining has always been there. I think it'll still be there. I think what's great is what Burkina Faso has done with mining, which is nationalize them, which has helped them eliminate their foreign. So that's a huge, huge, I would say win, and I think everyone should take note. There's still too many mines being operated by foreign companies across Africa where the government is a minority shareholder and most of the product is exported and most of the profit is exported. I think it was something, I forgot which, I don't know if it was gold or what it was, but the Burkina Faso government used to earn like 1 billion US dollars per year about it, from the sales. And then once it was nationalized, they were able to earn like 18 billion off of that one mineral per year. So that's something, of course, that's alerting the West, and it's becoming political. It's a little bit controversial. I would say oil and gas is another one that's big because it drives so much economic development on the periphery. There's lots of foreigners coming in. There's renewed interest. Like we have so many people who've never been to Senegal, and now while they're here for work, they want to invest. They want to do other businesses. There's now there's a demand for restaurants. There's a demand for housing, and so that develops other subsector or other secondary sectors. There's catering that they need, and all of these things have to be up to standard. So all of that brings along with it. It's not just about the oil and gas, but again, it's the same thing with the mining. A lot of people are getting away from gray energy, is what they call it, and there's a big, big push for renewable energy. And so the issue that I see is that I have partners abroad that want to invest in Africa. They have funds earmarked for Africa. They're really interested in hydrogen, green hydrogen, solar, wind, and they really want to finance those kind of projects. The problem is the projects just aren't here, at least not as much as they could be. And a lot of people don't realize that there's that funding available. And so there's a push to create the product, but it takes time and it takes money. And so that's where there's a gap right now is, and then also, part of it is for the renewable energy, a big part of it is selling back to the grid, right? Because you're creating energy. So where do you sell it to? You have to have a partnership with the local governments or the local electric company, the public utilities. And the problem is a lot of the local governments that I found personally when I'm advocating for my clients is that they just don't understand. They don't know what biomass is. They don't understand how a turbine can run 24/7 and produce 20 megawatts of electricity because they're so used to hearing about solar, which is only functional part of the day. So it takes a lot of like explaining and presenting and trying to convince people of some, of concepts that the rest of the world kind of knows about already. But that's something that's, on the horizon, and there's a lot of opportunity, for renewable energy. Housing is a big, or, real estate is the big one. I would say not just like a personal house or residency, but there's a lot of push for smart cities. Again, with a, better waste management or renewable energy component to it. So a lot of developers are creating, like what we call in French a cité, or, kind of a semi-autonomous neighborhood where there's security, there's a park for the kids to play in, there's paths with gardens and a pool, and maybe there's 4 or 5 different models of houses, and then they have buyers come in and everyone buys one, and you're sort of part of a community. So there's a lot of push for that, and a lot of them are smart, which means that there's a big emphasis on renewable energy and zero waste and all of that. So that's something that I'm seeing more and more of, and a lot more tourism, trying to bring people to Africa for tourism. I know Kenya's, of course, has always been the leader for tourism. We don't even have a sliver of the tourism, that goes to Kenya, but I think we do have a lot of potential, at least in Senegal and other countries, for more tourism. And so that's another industry. I had one other I was going to mention. I'm blanking out on what it was. Oh, agro-industrial. So a lot of people focus on just agriculture, like growing products, and I guess a lot of people are thinking about, how to industrialize that process. So like I'm working with someone right now actually who's doing cereals, like traditional cereals here in Senegal. We have a lot of like millet-based cereals and healthy food that's rich in iron and gluten-free and all of that, baby food, baby cereal. And so the problem is to get it certified for FDA, USDA, up to par for foreign buyers, and just that whole process for exporting and making sure that the packaging is not just, checking the boxes, but that it's, appealing, and that it's, something that people want to buy, and the marketing and the colors and the logo are all part of it. And so that's a barrier to entry that often working with people on. But I have a client from Washington, D.C. Her long-term strategy is to set up a agro-industrial factory here in Senegal and then source products locally. And then also do her own sourcing, like grow her own products and then do her own packaging here locally to make sure that it's all up to standard. And then she has her own supermarket chain in the DC area. She has 6 locations. And so she needs to source her own food, and she's specializing in Africa consumable products. So I have quite a few contacts like that. People doing groundnuts, high quality peanut oil to export and to consume locally. Peanut byproducts. That's where the biomass comes in for the renewable energy. They burn their shells afterwards and create electricity. But yeah, there's lots of agro-industrial. I have agro-industrial, there's a chicken value chain in Ghana as well that I'm helping to support for finance. But he's doing, animal feed. He's working with local producers, and he's got a big factory project that he's trying to expand. I think there's 64 KFC locations in Ghana, not to mention, other franchises that are from Ghana that want to source locally, want to source chicken locally. So he's trying to, scale his, so that they don't have to import. So those are just some examples.
Wow. So Danielle, I feel like in the past few minutes you just showcased that Africa is full of opportunities cross-regionally, and you're definitely an address where investors can approach as the same Zaria Mobility, but you just showcased and exemplified how many opportunities there are on the continent to invest. And Jane, I really want to hear from you, but just really out of curiosity for the audience, for me personally as an investor, the barriers to entry from mining all the way to if I wanted to start my own gluten-free cereal line to sell across Europe, how hard is it to break into this market? What is the upfront investment figure that we're talking about for someone who just wants to start out? Where do you even start?
Yeah, you can hear me? Sorry.
Yep.
Yes, okay. So I believe the biggest opportunity lies at the intersection of digital transformation and inclusive development in emerging markets, especially in Africa, such as government institutions and business increasingly are currently embracing the technology. So there's the pressing need for solutions that are not only innovative, but accessible and affordable and are tailor-made to local realities. So that being said, I feel like if you're coming in to invest, then it would be the education, tech, and institutional management systems that enable quality education for both public and private sectors. Maybe the fintech, that's a financial technology that expands access to secure, transparent payment and revenue collection systems. Just earlier, we have the data analytics and automation tools that optimize resource management for government and cooperatives, and solutions that support supply chain and agricultural value chains, boosting productivity and market access. As Danielle has given us the robust a vision or the visuals in agriculture value chains. And then also we have cross-border platforms that enable seamless collaboration and trade across African economies. So by focusing on that scalable and adapting software and services that align development goals and local contexts, businesses can unlock significant impact and growth simultaneously. by investors overseas and also locally. Yeah. So that will also leverage the data and automation to enhance efficiency and decision making, strengthen their digital infrastructure in sectors like education, again, finance and government, and promote ethical and inclusive growth. So I think that's about it from me.
Interesting, Jane. And you mentioned AI earlier on. Is that a sector where
Yeah.
you see growth opportunities in AI consulting services? OpenAI is now moving into Africa and is really trying to build up in Africa. Is that something that you see? Is AI consulting a sector that you see emerging across your region?
Well, yes, AI is the current, everyone is moving into artificial intelligence and machine learning, where we can reduce the amount of work we do manually. And I think that is and I like that companies are quite embracing that through successful alignment of innovation with real world needs, supporting public and private institutions, and as we digitalize operations, navigating funding pressures and demand greater accountability. So AI is the direction we're moving into, reducing the churn of work we do manually, even from my end, like to a small thing or to a larger extent of the way we reason, the way we think, the way we operate, the way we give solutions. So AI is definitely going to build systems to solve, build trust, create long-term value above everything else. And yeah, AI is the current direction. So I challenge all of you to upskill into the AI space because it's coming in strong, even in the beauty industry, and quite strongly.
Very interesting. Very mindful of time. I feel we could go another 2 hours talking about the many opportunities that there are. And I feel we need to continue the series and dive deeper into Jane's work in the tech space. And Danielle, it's fascinating all the different opportunities that you talked about. And I just really want to get into the gluten-free business now that you just mentioned it and really the value creation that there is on the African continent, but very mindful of time. Let's dive into the future. And I just want to have a round where each of you just really gives a top opportunity where you see for someone who wants to come and invest in Africa, perhaps not has more than 100,000 starting capital. Where do you see the biggest opportunity within the next 5 years? And what is your advice to start? What entity? And of course, you can promote your own services and offerings as well.
Shall I start again? Or
Please.
Collins, you haven't talked in a while. Do you want to
Go
dive?
ahead, Danielle. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll be.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, with that, it's helpful to know the budget. But first, I would say, it's important to do things step by step. So doing webinars, I think, is really important because it doesn't cost anything, or it's very affordable. You don't have to go anywhere, and you can learn from other people, just like we're doing here. And you can ask questions, and you can sort of narrow down with your own research. And what I think is important is to narrow it down to 2 or 3 sectors and 2 or 3 countries, and do some business trips. So we offer that, and I encourage that before, because one of my client from DC, her idea was just to come set up this, and I said, why don't we first do a 10-day business discovery trip? I'll take you out to the different products. We're gonna meet the producers. We're gonna go to the farm. We're gonna see how it's grown. We're gonna do a cooking demonstration. We're gonna have a meet and greet. And then we're going to, visit an existing factory that you can maybe subcontract to for the first 6 months to a year and test out things like cost and time and logistics and legal legal obstacles and getting things exported. And then once you're ready, then we can set up the factory. So there's a lot of things to be considered, and it's important to go step by step. And I think the business discovery trip is important. And I would say to have 2 or 3 markets that might be interesting. and then weigh your options and do pros and cons. And like I said, go very slowly. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, and test it out. And I think having a realistic idea about, it is really difficult to get a business loan, so you are putting your own money into it. And so you want to be careful with what you're doing. And so making very strategic, decisive, taking action step by step and seeing how it goes. And then even if it doesn't go the way you wanted, at least you have a plan B and you're not disappointed. So it's really important to have realistic expectations and take things slow. But in terms of what's for West Africa, we're not as, I would say, advanced as Southern and Eastern, some, countries where those economies are booming. We've got, coffee franchises on every street corner that are all consistent in terms of quality and product. And they've really got that down. We are, I would say, a little bit behind. And I think there's still a huge emphasis on, there's a gap between a lot of people who are still doing local production of agricultural goods that they really want to modernize and they really want to export and they really want to scale up. And so if you can come as an investor with buyers and with a knowledge of the market and with a way for them to market themselves and improve their, like I was saying, their packaging and their a lot of them don't really have like good logos, or they haven't really given much thought into presentation and, taking that to international expos or things like that, getting more visibility, doing things like cooking demonstrations so that people know how it's actually prepared and how to eat. I think that would be a big, that would go very well. And you wouldn't have to include the government very much. It's relatively easy to export from Africa, those kind of products. It's just some steps that you have to go through. The difficult part is getting it imported into foreign markets. So like the US is really tricky, and Europe is also pretty tricky. So once you've mastered that and once you've figured out how to do it, it can be a pretty scalable enterprise. You can start doing, multiple containers. I think one of my colleagues that I was meeting with today, she said she exports just cereals, just like cereals and grains, like one container a month so far, which I thought was very impressive because she just got started. It's like a 40-foot container of cereal every month. So I think that's important. And then for the beauty space, I think that, for selling here in Africa is a great idea. I think it's also really cool to have natural products made in Africa that you can also export to markets elsewhere. That we have lots of shea butter and karité and local products that are really natural and good for you, that I think there's a market out there. But again, it comes down to packaging. It comes down to people knowing the products and trusting them and being familiar with them. And so if you have a budget and you put an emphasis on marketing and getting the buyers and overcoming those trade barriers, and I think that's an easy way to. I wouldn't necessarily recommend real estate. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I wouldn't, as someone who's just starting out, I wouldn't necessarily, in general, recommend.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Wow. So again, mindful of time, you do have to join our next session on the 4th of June because there's so much more to unpack. But Jane and Collins, in a nutshell, where do you see opportunities for investors who want to come and invest in Africa in the future?
I think I'll go first before Jane. I think for me, first of all, to address Angelina, there's an emerging market in the creative space. That is an untapped market that the government right now did statistics. It's almost about 5 billion to be picked up from them in a year. So what you're saying is that the beauty and cosmetic space, they're advertising most of their products, the local markets on the creative industry, because it's now, internet is huge in Kenya. So the creative industry can get to the farthest corners of this country. So I think that emerging market is one to invest in, and as well as e-mobility, the e-bikes. We're seeing a very large number of companies coming to invest with the e-mobility, e-bikes, because there's the lower part of the country that really needs that for transportation, and also just commodities moving around. So a lot of e-bike companies are coming to set up shop in the country as well. For an investment perspective, we have one of the I think, a Swiss company called Iwaka already established in Kenya on the e-bikes platform, and they've grown now even to go to Tanzania and Rwanda to basically launch their platform. So I would focus on the emerging market, because the big players coming in the manufacturing, agricultural, tech space is really clustered to high investments in that particular industry. So I think I would tap into the emerging markets, into the Kenyan economy right now.
Thank you, Collins. Jane, your pick.
Well, thank you. So to me, future-proof investments are those that combine sustainable impact, adaptability, and long-term value creation. So it's not just putting in the money. It's what long-term value creation are you doing? And they're rooted in solving real problems that we have today while evolving in the needs for tomorrow, as I said earlier. So in technology and software, especially in my niche, that means building systems that are innovative, but also secure, scalable, and designed with easy user in mind. So what I feel is we can leverage that in investing in people and knowledge transfer, ensuring there is continuity beyond any single product or a team. Okay. And then also I feel like we can adapt to regulatory and technical shifts, as I said earlier, such as AI, cloud computing, and cybersecurity standards. As forgive me if I'm biased, I'm all into the tech. So my leading points would be towards the tech space. And I feel we should also promote ethical and inclusive growth, especially in emerging markets, Again, strengthen the digital infrastructure in critical sectors, again, in like education, finance, and government. And we leverage data while enhancing automation. We're big on automation currently to enhance efficiency and, again, decision making. So long term of it is relevance and value over time. And that's the kind of investment I personally believe in.
Thank you for this closing feedback. With this, we slightly overrun, but we also started slightly late. So with this in mind, I just want to say a big thank you, Collins, Danielle, Jane, and all our participants, Angelina, for jumping in and introducing yourself so beautifully. And, with what you're building, I think this is exactly the type of conversation we want to have, we need to have. And there's so many opportunities just in this chat right now. So please, for everyone who's watching the replay, I will put all the information in the description, in the replay recap. And Angelina, the name of your company, you did not mention it earlier, but please do share it. We will also add it to the description, and let's just have more of those conversations. I want to say thank you for the trust that you all brought to this plenary today, and thank you for the curiosity that made you dial in and connect. We will continue the conversation on the 4th of June in the third session, where we continue talking about trust and more remittance opportunities. I want to say thank you very much. Asika Mwema, as they say in parts of East Africa. Thank you very much for dialing in. Go with light, go with God, and we speak very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tallulah.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
everyone.
much. Have a good
Thank you.
night. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.